Imagine being born into a world where your very first moments are not met with celebration, but with anxious scrutiny, where survival depends not only on braving the elements and disease, but on the judgment of your own family. This was the reality of childhood in the Viking Age, an era where simply growing up was a relentless trial, and only the toughest survived. Today, Ancient Wonders dives deep into the true saga of Viking childhood, a tale of hardship, tradition, and resilience that forged one of history's most legendary peoples. Our story begins in a smoky Viking longhouse, deep in a Scandinavian winter. Outside, snow piles against timber walls. Inside, a mother labors by the flickering fire, surrounded by anxious kin. There are no doctors or hospitals, just the wisdom of elders and the hope that both mother and child will survive the night. Yet, even if the baby is born alive, survival is far from certain. Historians estimate that nearly half of all Viking children died before reaching the age of 5. Disease, malnutrition, and the unforgiving cold claimed countless young lives. But the most chilling threat to a newborn wasn't always nature. It was an ancient tradition known as útburðr. In this custom, the father held the power to decide whether his newborn would live or die. After birth, the father would inspect the infant for signs of health and strength. Was the child robust, or did it show signs of weakness or deformity? In a world where every extra mouth could mean the difference between survival and starvation, this decision was as practical as it was brutal. If the father judged the child unfit, he could choose to expose the infant, leaving it outside, unprotected to the mercy of the elements. This act was not considered murder, but a grim necessity. Medieval law codes from Iceland and Norway reference the exposure of unwanted or malformed infants, and archaeological evidence supports these tales. In some Viking settlements, the remains of infants have been found in unusual locations, on property boundaries or outside main burial grounds, suggesting they were never fully accepted by the community. If a child survived those first perilous days and was accepted by the father, another challenge awaited: the naming ceremony. 9 nights after birth, the family would gather for the vatni, the water sprinkling ritual that officially welcomed the child into the clan. The number 9 was sacred in Norse mythology, echoing the 9 worlds of Yggdrasil and the 9 nights Odin hung from the world tree. During the ceremony, the father would sprinkle water over the child's head, speak its name aloud for the first time, and present symbolic gifts: a tiny arm ring for a girl, a miniature sword for a boy. These were more than keepsakes. They were believed to protect the child from evil and signal their place in the world. Only after the ceremony did the child gain legal protection. Before then, the infant was in a kind of limbo, neither fully person nor fully kin. After the naming, killing the child would be considered murder, punishable by both human law and the wrath of the gods. Even with a name and a place in the family, Viking infants faced a gauntlet of dangers. The longhouse was smoky and crowded, a breeding ground for disease. Clean water was scarce, leading to deadly outbreaks of dysentery and other illnesses. Mothers nursed their babies for as long as possible, sometimes up to 3 years, to boost survival. Amulets, tiny Thor's hammers or animal teeth, were hung around babies' necks to ward off evil spirits and disease. Parents would even smear protective runes on the baby's forehead or cradle. Yet, despite these efforts, many children did not survive. Archaeological finds show the bones of Viking-age infants often bear signs of malnutrition and disease. Life was a constant battle, and only the strongest made it through. If a child survived infancy, the next stage was no less perilous. By age 3 or 4, Viking children were expected to contribute to the household. Girls learned to weave, cook, and care for younger siblings. Boys tended livestock, fetched water, and began their first lessons in combat. Play was not just for fun, it was preparation for life. Archaeologists have found miniature swords, shields, and boats in Viking settlements, suggesting that even games were training for adulthood. Children learned to row, wrestle, and throw spears almost as soon as they could walk. But the dangers didn't end there. The Viking world was rife with violence, not just from outside raiders, but from within the community. Feuds between families could erupt into bloodshed, and children were not always spared. The sagas tell stories of young boys witnessing, or even participating in, acts of violence and revenge. Accidents were common: drowning in icy rivers, being trampled by livestock, or falling victim to disease. Childhood in the Viking Age was anything but safe. Education in the Viking Age was not about reading and writing. Few could do either, but about learning the skills and stories needed to survive. Around the hearth, elders told tales of gods, monsters, and legendary heroes. These sagas were more than entertainment. They taught lessons about bravery, loyalty, and cunning. Children learned to respect the old gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, and to fear the spirits that haunted the forests and fjords. Superstition was a daily reality. A sudden illness, a failed crop, or a child's unexplained death might be blamed on trolls, witches, or the anger of the gods. Rituals and sacrifices were common. Families might offer food, weapons, or even animals to ensure the health of their children. In some rare cases, archaeological evidence suggests that human sacrifice, including the sacrifice of children, may have occurred, though these cases are still debated among scholars. By age 7, a Viking child who had survived this far had a much better chance of reaching adulthood. This was the beginning of more formal training. Boys started learning the warrior's craft, not just how to wield a sword, but how to read the sea and stars, build ships, and understand the complex codes of honor that governed Viking society. Girls took on the critical responsibilities of running a household. They learned to spin and weave, brew ale, preserve food for the long winters, and manage the intricate social ties that held families and villages together. In many ways, a woman's skill at the loom or in the kitchen could be as vital to a family's survival as a man's prowess with a blade. By their teens, many boys joined their fathers or uncles on trading voyages or even their first raids. Some served as ship's boys, learning the ropes, literally and figuratively, while others cared for weapons and supplies. Coming of age in the Viking world wasn't marked by a single ceremony, but by a series of ever more dangerous and demanding tasks. Success meant respect, a chance to gain wealth and fame, and the right to stand among the warriors of the clan. Failure could mean disgrace, or even death. The pressure to prove oneself was immense, and the stakes were high. Archaeological discoveries reveal that some Viking warrior graves contain the remains of teenagers, buried with swords and shields, their bones marked by wounds from battle. Girls, too, were expected to step into adult roles early. By their mid-teens, many were married, running households, and even wielding significant power within their communities. The Norse sagas are filled with stories of formidable women, wise, cunning, and sometimes ruthless, who shaped the destinies of their families and clans.